All right, for those of you that hate sanding, we're going to talk about sharpening card scrapers today. And I want to talk about sharpening them because of all the tools people learn to sharpen, this seems to be the hardest. And yet once you learn to do it, it's really the easiest. There's nothing to this, but it's maybe too simple because I have read that it takes a year to learn to sharpen a card scraper properly. Took me a year. Hopefully I can save you some time and you can learn to do it in less. Okay? So, I'm going to start out. We have to get these edges straight, true, and polished. So I have a magic marker here that I'm just going to mark this edge with on both sides. And we're only going to do the long edges on this scraper, although you can do all four edges if you want. Okay? Now we have to file that straight and square. And a lot of people are uncomfortable. Have I got it square? So I'm going to show you a quick trick. Is if you set this in a vise very low, so that it's just barely above the top of the vise, it's hard to get very much out of square. And the vise itself actually will provide you a reference for the squareness, okay? And you can take the file and just slide it along that edge. And I've got my fingers on each side of the file, and they're riding on the top of the bench. And that helps keep it level so that I get a true surface. Okay? And if this has been sharpened before, this isn't much work. You won't have a lot to do this. That little bit, I've already removed all of the magic marker and gotten that edge done with the file. I'm going to turn it over and do the other side, because the one thing about card scrapers is they get dull fairly quickly. Fortunately, you don't have to file them every time you sharpen them, and when I show you how to burnish it, we'll talk a little more about that. Right now, let's get this edge cleaned up. And there we go. The magic marker's gone, and that edge is clean. Now we're ready to move to a home and finish cleaning these up and polishing the edges before we burnish them. All right, we have filed both edges. The rest of the work will take place with either a stone or a burnishing tool. And it starts with the stone. Because we filed these edges, we have a little bit of a burr here on them, and we need to remove it. So I'm using a 400 grit diamond to get rid of the burr, and then I will finish it with a 1000 grit diamond to make it a smoother surface. Finally, I like to go to a ceramic hone. When you use a ceramic, you can use sandpaper, whatever you have. You don't even really have to do it. But I find that if you have a polished edge, when you turn the burr will last a little longer. Okay? So, a little lubricant on the stone. I'm using Invisiglass. Any kind of an automotive windshield cleaner will work great. Don't use Windex. Don't use your kitchen stuff. It has ammonia in it. Other chemicals not good on your stones. Okay? This is real simple. You just have to slide this back and forth on the stone. And you may have to move your fingers back and forth a little. This is flexible. It's not like a plane blade where when it contacts the surface, the whole thing is there. And I'm just feeling the burr is gone. That's all I want. If you have a brand new scraper, this may be a little more work the first time. It's just like a plane that you're sharpening or a chisel that you're sharpening. First time you do it, the prep has to happen, and it can take a little longer. We're good there. I'm going to do the other side. this one. And here. You don't have to go too far up on the scraper. I've got it overlapping the stone by, half, 3/4 of an inch or an inch, and that's more than enough. Just enough to make sure you can hold it flat to the stone. I've got all the edges done with the 400. Let's swap to the 1000. Okay. There's one edge. There's the other. There's really no need to go any finer than this with the stones, because when you burnish the edge, and I'll show you when we burnish, I'll talk a little more about that, but when you burnish the edge, it will polish some itself, okay? So, we've got all the edges done. Now we need to do the sides. Here's the hardest part, maybe, is holding this vertical. And if you're concerned about it, check it with a square, okay? If you're comfortable drilling holes square, you can hold this square. If you're not, then give yourself a reference of some sort, okay? And just check it. While you're doing this, I have it angled to the stone a little, and I'm moving forward with that angle. That's to keep from wearing grooves in your stone. In a diamond, that's not a big issue, but if you're using an oil stone, you can wear a groove in it, and with a water stone, you will wear a groove in it. All right? And you don't want to do that. It's hard on your stones. Now, I just flipped it and do it. I've done a lot of these. I'm used to holding it square. And I just look at the edge to make sure I've got a nice polished edge here. Okay. Keep a little paper towel handy. You're going to be wiping this stuff up. You don't want to leave any of this behind for when you start burnishing. Burnishing is rubbing a very hard surface over the edge of your tool. And the idea here is we're going to turn a little hook on here. Kind of looks like that. And you start first by drawing out the edge. And I just have a flat piece of wood here that I'm using so that I can get my burnishing tool. And if you are having trouble sharpening card scrapers and you're trying to use an old screwdriver or something, do yourself a favor. Get a real burnishing tool. These are highly polished and they're very hard. Both critical to getting this to work right. I'm putting a little oil on this. Makes it slide nicer. And I'm going to take it, and the first thing I want to do is draw this side down into where our edge is. And you do that by laying it on the wood and holding your burnisher flat on the wood and the scraper. That's a very tiny angle right on the very edge. And you sweep it back and forth. Hear that nice ticketing? Sometimes it's called ticketing. Okay? And it just takes a few passes, 10, 20 passes is more than enough. We'll do the other side. And then we'll do the other edge, both sides. And it doesn't seem like you're doing a lot, But because you have an edge here and a round surface here, you're actually exerting thousands of pounds of force on that edge. And you're forming that steel. You're taking that flat that was like this, and you're curving the two sides in a tiny bit. And that's the beginning of the burr. And what we're going to do next is called turning the burr. For that, we're going to move to a vise. Again, just like when we filed the edge, we want to set this very low in the vise. And this time, it's not so it can keep us level, but so it can keep us from tilting too much. Because we're going to start out by rubbing this hard surface along this edge perpendicular to the sides. But then we have to work our way down so it's at a slight angle to the sides. And that's where you get the burr. It's called turning the burr. Okay? So first, I'm going to hold it so that it's level, using my fingers on the vise, almost like when I filed it. And I'm going to take a few strokes. Don't put too much pressure here. That's probably the hardest thing to learn, and the mistake I certainly made for a long time. I thought you had to really get after this and turn a big burr. And ideally, you want to turn a small burr. The smaller the burr, the better in most cases, because it'll last longer. This isn't a material removing tool, it's a cleanup tool. It'll remove material, but you're not, if you've got very much to take off, use a plane. You come back, this will clean up irregular grain. You know, you've got gnarly grain that tears out no matter what you do with your plane. You can clean that up with the scraper because it's taking just a tiny bit. So, I've gotten the edge done, and I like to, and find it seems to ride better, angle the burnisher a little to the work rather than holding it perpendicular. I don't know why, but it just seems to slide better. Works for me. Okay, now I'm tilting it down to the left side, and I'm just going to take, I don't know, 6, 8 strokes back and forth on there, and I can just barely feel the burr. You have to learn to feel this burr. It's actually that small. I'm going to come back on the other side. I'm going to start level, and I'm going to start dropping the handle a little. I'm putting, very little pressure here, just enough to feel that I'm contacting the burn or the scraper, and that I'm controlling it, what I'm doing. And that should be done on that side. Turn it over, drop it down low in the vise, and we're going to do the same thing here. So there's 1, 2, 3. There's the 90-degree burnish. I'm going to start working it down on this side, and then I'm going to come back and work it down on this side. Okay, so here we are. And it doesn't take too many strokes. I can feel that burr right now. Okay. And there we are. Let's see if it works. All right, let's see if we did any good. This is an old scraper, dull, hasn't been sharpened, and you can tell that because when I scrape with it, instead of getting really nice shavings, I get dust. All right? Not what we want. We want shavings. Let's see what this does. How about that? If you like don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. So,
Oh yeah, look at that shaving.
if you like the shavings, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.
Stop. You gotta do
I
that.
messed it
You gotta
up.
do that again. Do that again. If we can get quiet on set, please.
Director.